What's up, everybody? It's Catfish on Ice, episode 283 with Chad Minton, Max Greenberg, and Boyd Farrish, your host tonight. And wow, this team is in a bad place right now. The fans are in a bad place. We've got a whole week to think about it, basically, until they play again. And then, we get the Colorado Avalanche. Thanks for that. But we are brought to you by DraftKings Pick 6, part of the Hockey Podcast Network. And we are going to start tonight's episode off with, of course, talking about the trip to Sweden, the Global Series. The Predators did split those two games. And as Boyd was talking about before we went live, you would think that they lost both games 8-0, the way fans feel right now. Also, there was a lot of rumors going around that Brunette was going to get fired this week because it was the long break. We thought if it was going to happen anytime soon, it was going to happen now or sometime this week. Doesn't feel like it's going to happen. No, it would have already happened if they were going to do it this week, because now you got to get ready for your next game. So it looks like Brunette's going to be sticking around for at least a little bit longer. So we're going to go around the room here. The panel is going to talk about how much longer do we think Andrew Brunette actually has. So we'll get into that. I want to talk about how right now it looks like the Predators, all the insiders, almost every day you're seeing a range of insiders around the hockey world talking about Nashville is about to be open up for business. You're even seeing crazy names like Philip Forsberg mentioned right now in trade rumors. Never thought I would say that, but here we are. So we are going to unpack all of that. Talk about, do we think that could actually happen? Would that benefit the franchise to do a complete fire sale like that right now? So I can't wait to get into that. A lot more to get into, as well as this is going to be a just kind of a winging it type of episode. There's going to be plenty to talk about. So let's start with the Global Series, and we're going to go to Boyd first because he was actually there in person. Yep. And I am so jealous, but also so happy for him that he got to experience that. So Boyd, tell us everything about your trip to Sweden, and then we'll talk about the actual games itself.
Well, I'll tell you what, we do not have enough time for me to tell you everything about the trip to Sweden. So I will keep that part short, but Stockholm is an incredible city, and we had a blast going there. History, culture, the food's amazing. The city's super walkable. You can just kind of, walk off in any direction, and it's sort of laid out in the European style of being sort of built around a center point. So it doesn't matter kind of which way you go, you eventually sort of make your way back to the center naturally. So it was a great city to kind of get lost in a little bit. But I highly, highly recommend going to Stockholm as anyone has a chance to do so. As far as the actual games themselves and the experience with the Predators, Avicii Arena, where they were playing, super unique setting. It's actually it's a sphere, so kind of like the Vegas sphere a little bit. So if you're afraid of heights, the upper sections are definitely not for you. But
okay,
the atmosphere, the experience for those two games was second to none.
Let me ask you, Boyd. What was the fan split? Was there did you think there was a pretty good turnout of Preds fans there? Were you kind of surprised by that, or what would you call that?
There was. I would put it this way. I think obviously I was part of the team sponsored fan trip, so we were kind of all traveling together, and we were all in the same section for the most part. It was a pretty good representation of both between Predators and Penguins fans. I wouldn't say in terms of crowd noise, there was a distinct advantage of one over the other. And, it's always hard to tell when, that sort of setting where you get a lot of, fans that aren't from the home cities themselves, and how they split. But the Swedish fans were incredible. I mean, we had, in the section that sort of the Predators fan base was located, in sort of the adjacent sections, there were Swedish fans standing up, leading the cheers all game. they were super into it. Obviously, incredibly excited to cheer for both Philip Forsberg and Erik Karlsson. The pop when Forsberg scored the tying goal of game one with 90 seconds left. I mean, it was deafening in that arena. So, and then to be followed almost immediately by Stamkos scoring an OT winner. I mean, what an experience. It was so very cool. But the fans there could not have been more excited. They could not have been more friendly and welcoming and just, ready to have a good time. So it was really a tremendous experience and something I will not soon forget for sure.
And let's break down these two games now. The first game, Preds play a really strong game, really good game, and it would have been really a shame if they would have came out with a loss, which they very nearly did, if not for Philip Forsberg's heroics late in regulation. And then Stamkos, he's got a couple big goals recently for the team. As much as he's down in the dumps right now, at least he's slowly starting to hit some clutch goals lately. But he hits the game winner in overtime. So the Preds actually steal game one, and they deserved that win. They deserved that win. You look at the expected goals from that game. You look at the opportunities. I'm glad that they were able to get rewarded with that win. But then they follow it up with the second game, and it was probably one of their worst showings of the season. They had trouble even getting shots on net. And then the shots they did get that I saw, they were very low danger. It was a snooze fest of a game. A snooze fest. It was horrible to watch. And so that's what you get from the experience. So the Preds only scored 2 goals in the 2 games, but they do get the win. They do get one win at least. But as of now, they're 31st in the overall league standings. Only the Calgary Flames are behind them. They're actually on pace to possibly be worse than last year in terms of points. So the offensive woes just continue to follow this team. Max, what did you get? What did you get from both games? And do you think we're maybe overreacting a little bit to the global series in terms of how bad it was? Or do you think just fans are just so impatient at this point that even one bad game is just like a compounding effect here where it's just the frustrations are at a boiling point right now?
Well, I will add, although I very much heard what happened in the games, I actually didn't watch the games Friday during the day. It happened when I was at work. And then Sunday morning, the game happened. Well, it was Titans game day, so I was getting ready for that. That's where my Sunday attention is devoted when that happens. But overall, it seemed like they had a really good game Friday. Like you just said, Chad, and they really, again, I saw the stats and all that. They looked like they played hard, everything you want to see there, and they got the win, which of course is great. And Sunday, again, like you just said, felt really bad. And, it's one of those things. Obviously, the team is, in a really bad spot. The game on, again, it's kind of hard to say because the game Sunday was really bad. But one thing I always say, and I said the last episode, is in Friday's game suggests, is it really a lack of effort with this team, or is it just them not being good?
I think it's a lack of talent more than a lack of effort. I don't think.
Agreed.
I'm not going to believe for us. We've said this time and time again. This team is so thin up the middle.
Yeah.
That everything kind of comes out from there. You've even got Ryan O'Reilly. I know he's always hard on himself, but even he's saying I can't do crap right now. I suck too. It's just a horrible dark cloud over this team right now.
He doesn't suck right now.
He's definitely not the problem. He is not the problem for this. I'll tell you that. But I just think that this team is so psychologically in their heads right now. And they desperately need a winning streak, not just to necessarily save the season, but just to have some momentum. But when you're only winning one game and then you're going right back to having a horrible game, you're not going to break out of this funk. And I've been saying this since the opening weeks of the season. I'm not going to believe in this team until I can see them win more than 2 games in a row. And right now, I don't even know if they can win more than 1 game in a row right now. That's how bad it is. So I just don't know what the fix is. Boyd, what do you think? What do you think could actually fix this team right now? Do you think there's no fixing this team right now?
I don't think there really is.
It is what they are. They are what they are. They are what they are.
I think it depends what you consider fixing, but I think the two games, especially the second game, I think highlighted some systemic issues, with kind of their playing style that have probably been there all along, but maybe weren't quite as visible as watching that game Sunday morning. And Pittsburgh is a team, because of the talent they have and some of the veteran players they have. They can move the puck back and forth horizontal in the offensive zone very effectively between Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Carlson, Brian Rust. They've got guys who can make those cross ice, quick movements.
Yeah.
And if you look at maybe the two goalposts and kind of draw a cylinder, the Predators defense, every time it would go side to side, would just commit fully back and forth. And as a result, those backside plays were wide open. And they followed the puck so hard back and forth that, it just allowed some of those really key opportunities, which overall they've been better about that this year than last year, which was an absolute garbage fire defensively. But, falling into some of those same patterns. The second is their breakouts through the neutral zone. They keep trying these diagonal cross ice passes.
Yes.
And they're just not good enough. And they get intercepted 80% of the time, it feels like. And it's just a turnover right back in your defensive zone. You can't even execute a line change. And it happens over and over and over again. And then offensively, because they're all gripping the stick so hard and they're so desperate to get goals, they've let perfect become the enemy of good. And instead of just, hey, we've got a somewhat rare 2-on-1, there's a defender there taking away the pass, just take the shot.
Yeah, they're passing. Yeah, Boyd, their passing has just been a real issue all year. It wasn't like it was a key play in the game, but for some reason it's a random play that stood out in the third. I think it was the third period. The Preds are trying to somehow I think they might have been down 2-0 at this point, but it's just like I was waiting for them to finally, because you always seems like the Preds a lot of times they'll just sleepwalk their way through a couple periods and then they'll just randomly wake up in the third period and you're like, where was all this in the first and second period? So I was kind of waiting for that to maybe happen in the second game. And one play that just sticks out where I'm like, this team is so disconnected right now. I think it was Steven Stamkos wins a faceoff in the offensive zone. You're thinking, okay, let's get something set up. And Justin Barron,
I know what you're talking about.
Barron literally passes it to an empty space where there's a diagonal corner where there's no one there. I don't know what he was thinking, what he was doing, but it's just things it's there's no cohesiveness with this team right now. And you watch some of the other teams out there. Almost every team, I feel like, not every team, but many of the teams that Nashville plays, it's worlds apart different how much more connected those teams are. And they connected hockey. Nashville does not seem connected at all with each other. It's like putting a square peg into a round hole type of situation. And it's painful to watch. And then whenever the Predators do happen to win some games every now and then, I feel like they're having to not get lucky, but they're almost having to just do it like it's not a team play sometimes when they're scoring these goals. It's like they're needing Philip Forsberg to just basically put the team on his back to get a goal every now and then. We're not seeing those connected teamwork type of goals, and that's just very concerning for this team right now. What about you, Max? What do you, do you think that they're really this bad? There's no getting out of this.
I assume could be some marginal fixes, but and again, I know what you guys are saying about, the connectivity, and I agree. And, and again, I think, I'm not saying there's not, some problems with coaching, coaching clear isn't perfect, but again, in defense, they have so few playmakers to work with, and part of the reason they can't make is they don't have playmakers too. Again, obviously the easiest fix is firing the coach and, getting someone else to hopefully put a new system in. But like, again, how with the team you have, is it really that? Again, when you have nothing in the middle of the ice, your only game changer is Forsberg. I mean, how much can you?
Fedor Svechkov, man, Fedor Svechkov. I don't know what the problem is with that one, but I mean, Svechkov is invisible out there. I've seen no growth from him, and so that one hurts big time. And I got to admit that I was wrong on that. I thought Svechkov was in for taking a big step forward this year, and he could still end up, finding his way out of it. There's still plenty of games left this year for us to, for him to kind of rescue his season. But man, that's really killing
as a player. That's really
killing this team right now. That Svechkov
it is.
There was probably more pressure on him than anybody else on the roster, to be honest.
Absolutely.
Given the leap he had to make the top 6 successful. And it's not that he's played poorly in the sense of he's not making bad decisions with the puck. He's not out of place. He's not turning the puck over and he's not taking a bunch of penalties. The things that you would sort of think about as, wow, they're playing bad, but just you need someone in his role to be able to drive offense, and right now he's just not doing it. And honestly, I think we're at the place where he needs to go spend a little time in Milwaukee and just.
We talked about that in the last episode. We literally talked about this.
Yeah.
So guys,
go get your confidence back, see a couple goals go in, spend 2 or 3 weeks down, come back up at Christmas or the beginning of the year with a little more jump in your step, and let's see what happens.
So I'm looking at the second game here, and I'm looking at like Money Puck and how they track the cumulative expected goals throughout the game. And Nashville didn't even move up from 0. I'm being dead serious. They didn't even move up from being pretty much 0 expected goals until midway through the second period. I don't think I've ever seen that on a chart like this. And I love to use this chart for Money Puck to see how a game trended. And I have never seen a team at 0 going into the second period for cumulative expected goals. I mean, that's just like mind blowing. And at this point, it's like, maybe you do have to fire Andrew Brunette. If it's going to be this bad, then I've come around on it. Honestly, I have. I think that right now the distraction is so bad for Nashville that this team needs. They're not going to get rid of Barry Trotz, so we can just forget about that. That's not happening. The ownership would have to get involved. I just don't think that's going to happen. And it seems like Trotz is going to keep staying loyal to Brunette, but just me personally, I have come around to. I don't think he's completely to blame necessarily, but I've come around to it. I almost think that Nashville needs such a shakeup right now that they might just have to go ahead and do this, because this dark cloud's not going anywhere. And it's just the energy is so negative around this team. And I'm not saying the players are being negative. They're doing everything they can to win right now. I'm just saying with the fans and with like just the way they look on the ice a lot of times, you got to start somewhere. And I mean, go. I mean, it's not like you're coming off a good year. You're coming off a 68-point year. So it's not like we're like, oh man, this isn't fair to Andrew Brunette. Like they had a good year last year. No, this is actually trending even. This could even be worse than last year. They could end up having fewer points. I think this team's worse than last year. I really do. You guys think they're better or worse?
Right now, I would say about the same.
I think they're worse. I really do. I'm looking at I'm looking at some of their I'm comparing some of their stats from this year and last year. Goals per game. They were 31st in the league last year as well at 2.59 goals. They're 31st again this year, but they're actually even scoring fewer goals slightly. They're at 2.4 goals per game this year. So they've gotten worse in that category. Power play, which we always want them to perform better at. Nashville last year was – where was Nashville at last year? 18th with a 21.9%. And where are they at this year?
About 26th, 27th, I think.
You are correct. They are 26th and at a 16%. So their power play has gotten worse this year. Is performing worse.
It's gotten better. You remember a couple weeks ago they were at 7%. So
I know. I'm saying compared to last year, though, their power plays gotten worse. But yeah, you're right. There was only. I mean, they couldn't get much worse. But let's see. Penalty kill. Penalty kill was looking great at the beginning of the season, and now their penalty kills. They're still performing decent. They're at 13th in the league, 81.4%. And I think last year,
which that is a huge factor of, they were performing well, but my goodness, they take so many penalties. Eventually,
and
you wear your penalty killing unit out, and then Cole Smith gets hurt, and
that's killed us too.
Yeah,
we haven't given nearly enough credit to Cole Smith and how badly he's been missed. But Nashville Predators were 7th in the league last year on penalty kill, 81.5%. So they're about the same there as well as last year. But it's just their offense has definitely gotten even worse so far. At least that's what the stats say. And then, I mean, just like goal differential. I remember their goal differential was really bad last year.
Minus 60.
Bad.
Minus 60. Yep.
Let's see. Let's
they
see
are
where they're
currently
at
on
now.
pace to be worse.
Well, yeah, their goal differential is minus 21 right now, which is I think only Calgary's worse. They're at minus 22. So,
and we're not even a third of the way through the season. So,
yeah,
they're on pace to be worse.
So, I mean, I hate to be so negative about this, but I'm just calling it objectively. I think this team very well could be worse. And if that's the case, then you have all the reason and you're justified to say, thanks, Andrew. But we needed you to take this team a step forward this year after 68 points. We gave you a chance. And I've changed my stance drastically about this over the last 3 or 4 weeks. I was still pretty much saying, okay, let's let Andrew Brunette coach this team out of it. It's still way too early. But we're at the quarter way mark now, and this team is just they're trending in such a bad direction that I think you almost have to shake things up at this point. And go interim route. I think you go interim route, and then you do it. Do you do a full vetting of coaches? You don't like that. I remember when they rushed to hire John Hines. I hated that at the time. I did not like how they just quickly in January said, let's bring John Hines in. I think this franchise needs a full vetting of coaches. They need to interview Carl Taylor. They need to interview some other guys. I know people don't like Peter DeBoer, but I think he should at least be interviewed if the vacancy becomes available. There's a lot. They need this franchise needs a full vetting of head coaches. If they end up firing Brunette.
I want to read something the other day that angry Preds fan tweeted regarding Andrew Brunette, because I agree with pretty much everything he said. And this is a dumb thing to say, but with the way it's gone now, but I'll say it. He basically said, my gut tells me he's a good coach, even if all the evidence adds up to the contrary, which I honestly agree with. But he said stuff like there's really no evidence, and it's been 102 games now of being very bad with no improvement. But he also said, it's like, look, he's like, what coaches could do much with this team? There's worst center group in the league, plus a terrible group of defensemen. And he basically said, he said the one thing I've been concerned with, as much as like I've been one of the ones who's not been like on the fire Andrew Brunette train. He said, this is where my mindset's been the whole time. He basically said, I'm much more concerned with every decision the front office has made in the last 2 years than keeping or firing Brunette. And like, again, I think, with a new coach, I think maybe it'll change, but marginally so. You're only going to see changes if you really bring in, new talent. That's not going to happen for a long time. Like this team is, they are so far from getting out of this, honestly.
AJ, we want to say hi to a YouTube commenter here. AJ Evans says on YouTube, and we're about to get into this topic big time. We're going to get into the Preds fire sale that could be coming, and you're hearing names even like Philip Forsberg tossed around right now. AJ on YouTube says it's going to be a sad day when Phil gets traded. You're telling me. I mean, that would be like just not even salt on the wound. That would be like running me over and then backing the car up over me again and then running me over and then backing it back up over me again. Like, I mean, sure, you could get a king's ransom for Philip Forsberg probably, but that would just crush me to see Philip Forsberg get traded. I mean, my three untouchables right now remain Philip Forsberg, Roman Josi, and UC Saros. I know people disagree with me on that, and that's fine. But those are just my three right now, untouchables. Of course, every player has their price. And if someone comes along and just offers something outlandish, then sure, maybe I'll entertain it. But in realistic terms, those are my three untouchables. Everyone else, including Ryan O'Reilly, including even some of the younger players, I think you have to entertain any and all trades that might come your way, because it's going to be ugly. This is approaching knockdown, drag out. We're going to be drafted in the lottery for the next few years, and maybe we'll get lucky and land another top 3 pick. I mean, I never want to see the team tank. I am an old school fan that always wants to see the team win and let things fall the way they fall. This team is so bad. And it's funny because I said the same thing about the Titans this year in football. This team is so bad that they don't have to lose on purpose. It's going to come naturally. I mean, that's how I feel.
So that's actually kind of the funny thing. I mean, I'll make a quick comment on that, and I'll make a comment on Andrew Brunette before we move on to the kind of trading conversation. I think part of the reason why I think Brunette is sticking around, as I was sort of, trying to wrap my head around it today, is, and this is sort of the comment I made about the Predators roster last year, even, and definitely this year as well. It's an incomplete project. Like even when they signed, even when Barry Trotz signed, the 3 veteran players, if you listen to his comments at the time, and if obviously if we take them at face value and not just as GM speak, it was, we're bringing in guys who know how to win to teach younger players how to win, which wildly ironic given where things are right now. But I think part of the reason why he's sort of riding it out with Andrew Brunette is, I think he understands that the Predators roster is at this moment in time an incomplete project. So, and this sort of goes to some of the comments, in the Twitterverse as well, which is, if Andrew Brunette's not really your coach and you want to bring in a Stanley Cup winning coach, or a Stanley Cup capable coach like Pete DeBoer, why would you do it now? Like that, you don't want to bring that guy in now. You want to bring that guy in 2 years when you've got Igor Surin, you've got a fully molded Brady Martin, you've got a fully molded Tanner Molendyk, and that next round of the core is actually sort of fully realized. So, Andrew Brunette still might get fired if this thing continues to go completely off a cliff. But in the vein of why that's maybe not happening yet is, and this sort of goes to Barry Trotz's, we're in transition and we're building commentary over the past week, which is, it's still, in process. It's still incomplete. And, and now I will sort of lean into the fire sale part of things. Did anyone think that Bunting or Howla would finish their contracts here and walk to free agency? Of course not.
No.
Did anyone really think Ryan O'Reilly, when he first signed that contract, did anybody think he was going to finish that contract here? Probably not.
No.
I didn't really think either Stamkos or Marchessault would finish their contracts here.
Well, real quick, the only way I thought O'Reilly would stick around here for his full contract is if somehow the Predators became, perennial playoff teams and they didn't want to lose O'Reilly. But I mean, that's actually been one move that I think it has been beneficial for the Predators, is Ryan O'Reilly.
And that's another thing I want to kind of jump in a little, talking about O'Reilly.
Yeah.
I'm actually writing an article about this right now, as I've told both of you. I think the O'Reilly thing is especially notable because if we remember last year, Trotz, not Trotz, this was Elliot Friedman talking about it, basically saying how Ryan O'Reilly has not a no movement clause, no trade clause, none of that stuff. But Trotz is essentially treating him like he was on a no movement clause just because like he thinks so highly of O'Reilly, and it makes sense because of everything he's accomplished in the league, the leader he is, the person he seems to be, all that stuff. Now insiders are it's gone from they're treating him this way to he's a likely candidate to be moved. Like I anticipate it happening. So that's very telling as far as, where Trotz is, how again, maybe it's, obviously what's relevant 8 months ago wasn't relevant now, but it's like, you can just look at that and think like, wow, something's really changed here. Like the fact that we went from he's being treated this way to he's probably going to be moved is really drastic.
Well, and before we get into that segment of Ryan O'Reilly, Philip Forsberg, UC Saros has been brought up. Of course, the more tradable guys have been brought up as well. But you're hearing these comments about the Preds are open for business and all that. Before we get to that, want to tell you about our sponsorship with DraftKings and the offer we have currently for you right now. This one's for the NBA fans out there. The NBA season tips off, and so does DraftKings' newest fantasy game. DraftKings Pick 6 is the easiest way to play for big wins with every possession, giving you a shot at real money. Here's how to play. Just pick more or less on 2 or more stats and unlock the upside every game brings. Pick 6 is available in Texas, California, Missouri, and more. New DraftKings customers get $50 in bonus picks with just a $5 entry on your first pick set. Don't just watch basketball, cash in. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN. Play just $5. Get $50 in Pick 6 bonus picks. Make the call. Ride the upside. In partnership with DraftKings Pick 6, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus, age and eligibility. Restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 bonus picks that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. So let's get more into this fire sale possibility. And one thing I want to talk about, though, to go back to the Andrew Brunette comments real quick that can take this into this. If Barry Trotz is going to be so patient and about keeping Brunette around because he feels like, well, it's not really on him because it's an incomplete project, which I agree with you, Boyd. It is an incomplete project, definitely. But doesn't that kind of make Trotz look bad then, that he hasn't built a winning roster for Brunette? Isn't that his job as the GM? And it's one thing. It's one thing to be an incomplete. It's one thing to be an incomplete project. It's a whole nother thing to possibly go 2 years in a row of being a 60-point something team near the no one thought Trotz didn't go out and get Stamkos, Marchessault, and Shea in that offseason to have this team performing in the 60s in points. So something is not adding up here. Either Trotz fumbled the bag or Brunette fumbled the bag. And if Trotz is saying, oh, well, the roster is not that good right now, so it's not Andrew Brunette's fault, really, so I'm going to keep him around, then I don't know what we're doing here. Like, someone needs to take the blame here is my point. And because it shouldn't be this bad. It shouldn't be this bad. That's just what I'm saying there. Especially if you're about to do a fire sale, which we don't know if that's for sure going to happen. This could all be like trade buzz because, the Frank Saravellis and all them, they're really good at what they do. They love doing these trade buzz art. We don't know how much is actually true when it comes to like Philip Forsberg. We definitely feel like Steven Stamkos could be traded though, right? That's the one I actually want to start with first, guys. If they can, but it's not going away. And I've seen reports that there are a few teams out there who are inquiring about Stamkos if you're willing to retain salary. Now, I'm in the camp that I don't think we should trade Stamkos if we retain salary. I think we should just keep him at that point. What do you think, Boyd?
Yeah, Nashville has enough bad money as it is right now.
Yeah.
Between,
obviously just keep him.
Yeah, like they're not having salary cap issues. there's other guys you can move to open up roster spots. Like this is something I tweeted out, I think yesterday morning maybe, which is, the things Barry Trotz has to do. If we assume, fairly obviously we're entering this, era of movement and players are going to get moved out and, they're, prepping for the offseason that honestly will probably actually define Barry Trotz's time as a GM, because, we're really going to see that next transitional phase is he has to make the easy trades. The guys that you're not necessarily going to get huge value for, but you got to move Bunting, you've got to move Howla, make some of those easy moves. O'Reilly potentially falls into that because, he doesn't have trade protection. So, even if you're showing him a bit of like, are you open to this respect? It's not like you have to get him to waive a clause. And you have to make those kind of easy moves. You have to avoid taking on bad money between, Tourist is still on the books. You've got Sissons is on the books for another year for his retention, or maybe it's Lazan, one of the two. You're still paying Matt Duchene.
I think Sissons is only this year.
It may only be this year. But, obviously the big ones are Tourist and Duchene. Now, granted, they're not in salary cap problems. They've got a ton of space. But don't take on bad money or do a bad retention just to move a contract. That's pointless. That doesn't help you.
I totally agree.
I wrote an article how, like, I dare say a buyout's a better option, not if more than anything else, because if you trade him, even retain salary, you have to probably attach a pick or so to make it done. You don't do that to buy him out.
Yeah,
I would rather.
I don't know if you can buy him out with a no move clause. I forget exactly how that works. We'd have to, ping Puckpedia and see what they say. But, and then, so yeah, don't just make a bad money trade just to move a contract out. As some of these young guys are getting older, getting better, Matthew Wood, it's not the worst thing in the world to have Steven Stamkos around. And lo and behold, it looks like Matthew Wood is going to be on a line with Stamkos on Saturday.
And I love that.
Based on the practice lines today. And Matthew Wood has 100% earned it. So don't make bad trades just to move guys out, which ironically is exactly what we've given Barry Trotz grief for over the past year, of being too ready to move guys and just, takes the first thing that's there or takes the first option, moves guys out. You don't have to do that now.
I don't want this team. I don't want Trotz to go out there and do a fire sale just for the sake of doing it. He needs to make smart, effective trades. I like what you say there, Boyd, about the easy trades first. You're not going to get a ton of value, but the value is going to be in clearing that roster space up. And with how this team's performing with all these veterans in the lineup and they're still this bad, I would rather go through a season like this, a season full of losing and pain, with a more youthful roster and seeing guys who we think are going to be here for the long-term future. I would rather see those guys playing big minutes. So that's why I love the idea of making these sensible trades, these easy-to-move trades like Halla and Bunting. And I'm not going to even be focused on what the return is. It doesn't matter. The return is clearing up that roster space. And then when it comes to O'Reilly, he's the one that's got the most value. So I would love to make a very smart, wise hockey trade. Say thank you for your service, O'Reilly. Go win a Stanley Cup somewhere. We'll all be cheering for you here in Smashville. As long as you're not like playing for like a bitter rival, obviously. But like, yeah, I think that's as long as O'Reilly's open to it. And of course, I think you do right by O'Reilly because he's done right by you. And I think you would need to have that conversation with him about how open he would be to being traded. I don't think you should just blindside the guy and trade him away. But if a contending team comes calling, and they're offering you some draft capital or maybe a younger prospect that you can pump into your system that could boost your prospect pool up a little bit, maybe something like that, then you take it. And hopefully O'Reilly can land on a good team and go play for a Stanley Cup.
I've been writing my article about how, like, especially the guy like O'Reilly, since he has another year, because he has another year left in his contract. The Preds don't trade him this year. Like I've talked about,
they don't have to, but his value is not going to be any higher than it is right now.
But I'm trying to prove the point is what you're saying is don't only take a trade if it's worth it, because you don't.
Yeah, I don't want to desperate. Yeah, sorry, Max. I don't want to just desperately trade him. Like I don't want Trotz to do any desperate trades just because the team's bad and they're going to be a seller doesn't mean you just like recklessly start trading people. Like he's got to be smart about this. And let's be honest with ourselves. He doesn't have a lot of high value trade pieces to work with anyway.
The main point I was trying to make was, because if a guy's like at the end of like last year of his contract, you're kind of in a spot where you're like, oh, you have to trade him now or you'll lose him for literally nothing. So you have to make that choice. The Preds are not in that spot with O'Reilly. They can say, hey, he's got another year left. We don't have to trade him now. Give us something that's worth it.
Oh, for sure. They have leverage there.
That's what I'm saying.
And I do think there's going to be a couple playoff contending teams who are going to be very, very interested in acquiring O'Reilly. And so,
well, I mean, let's say
fascinating to watch.
Let's go from a pure speculative measure. I mean,
I've heard New Jersey mentioned a lot of times.
I mean, could you imagine
you pulled that right out of my head, Max. Let's say Jack Hughes is still hurt, and maybe is slow coming back, and New Jersey comes calling and offers someone like, say, Dawson Mercer.
Oh, okay,
Done.
I'll take that.
I've been on Dawson Mercer for a while.
Yes. Please sign me up for that.
So, I think that's definitely what you're looking at. I mean, and
I'm looking at the win now teams. The win now teams who could be interested in O'Reilly. That's what I'm looking at there. But
yeah, I mean, and as it pertains to guys like Stamkos and Marchessault, you have to be careful because outside of even just them agreeing to waive to go somewhere else, as I believe it's I forget if it's Elliot Friedman or Chris Johnston that loves to say, I think it's Elliot Friedman, when you're in this situation, teams don't throw you a lifeline, they throw you an anchor. And, so you do have to be careful about how you approach some of those situations because, these teams are out there to bury you and, take you for everything that you've got.
Yeah.
So, that's probably the biggest cautionary tale right now is, listen to the best things that are available, have a conversation with some of those guys and see if, they're in a place where they're ready to move. And if they are, drum up a bidding war and see what you can do.
I'm not even entirely convinced that Stamkos would want to trade his or waive his protection because every account I've heard, Stamkos is very happy in Nashville in terms of not just being on the team, but the Nashville community. He's got his family set up here. He's a family man. He's nearing the end of his career. He's already accomplished so much in his NHL career. He's a future Hall of Famer. I'm not so sure that he would be willing to – I think it would be a very small number of teams that he would be like, okay, I'll waive it to go to that team. I think real quick, I just think the chances are so small that one, there's just too many things that have to happen for a Stamkos trade to happen right now. He has to be willing to waive the protection. You have to find a team that has the cap space to take him on. You would have to force Nashville into wanting to retain salary, which doesn't seem likely, as we just said. There's too many things that have to happen. I don't think Stamkos is getting traded. But real quick, Marchessault, I think he couldn't get out of here fast enough. I think he's the opposite. In my opinion, he's the opposite of Stamkos. He would waive that no move clause in a heartbeat if somebody to get out of Nashville. That guy just doesn't seem happy here at all.
Well, that's where I was going to add to what you just said about Stamkos potentially only having a short list of teams. And who knows, this might have changed because I heard this over the offseason. I had heard that in like a perfect world, like Marchessault would have been moved, but it would have been to like a very small set of teams, like either like Montreal, so we can go back home, or like other teams that like who are in states with favorable taxes. As crazy as that might sound, but it sounded like that's where, again, who knows how much that's changed over the past 6 months. I imagine a lot probably with the way the season started again. But that's
he's another hard player. He's another hard player to move too, just because his contract is so long. He's still got 3 more years left after this one. So you're asking for a team to take on an aging Marchessault and hoping that he's a product of his lack of productivity is just because he's stuck on a bad Nashville team, and he'll blossom as soon as you get him in a better situation. It's going to take a team like that to so I think he could also be really hard to move just because of the amount of years left on the contract.
And his underlying numbers have fallen off a cliff in the past 2 years.
Yeah. Real quick, guys, what about Philip Forsberg? Do you think what about Philip Forsberg? I got to address this elephant in the room. Do you think this is just all like mostly trade, not clickbait, whatever you want to call it? Like it's just getting people riled up. I just cannot imagine him actually getting traded. But would either one of you guys, is there a world where either one of you guys would be okay with trading Philip Forsberg right now? What do you think, boys?
So let's talk about information versus speculation. And I think that's the world we're living in right now. And, this is not me taking shots at people who speculate. I love to speculate. It's one of my favorite things to do. But, I'm not, when I'm speculating about what if the Predators traded Ryan O'Reilly to get Dawson Mercer, do I have any information on that? Absolutely not. Am I, trying to put pieces together in my head on things that might make sense in some world? Absolutely. So when, certain people who, have, larger audiences, and I'll say, the most common one we've seen is Jeff Merrick. And I like Jeff Merrick. I actually really enjoy listening to him. And when you hear the words he's using, I've wondered about Philip Forsberg. He is not reporting, I have information that Philip Forsberg is open to being moved or that the Predators are willing to move him. It's him looking at a situation and going, well, this team stinks. He's got a bunch of contract left and he's, moving into his 30s. I wonder if that might be someone who would be willing to be moved. So I think you have to, take the sort of tone and tenor of what's being said, versus, as we're starting to hear a little more from, the Chris Johnstons and the Elliot Friedmans, and to a partial extent, Frank Saravalli, making I've heard the Predators are open to business. I've heard the Predators are ready to start moving players. Like, those are just two fundamentally different things. So all that to say, I don't think there is a world, barring, some astronomical price tag that some other team is willing to meet, where Barry Trotz is even entertaining the concept of trading either Philip Forsberg or UC Saros.
I don't even think he would waste his time even on the phone talking. Like,
I would add, like, pretty much what I agree with you said, Boyd, about how, the only way I become even remotely okay with a Forsberg trade is if it's some like you said, astronomical price that you just cannot refuse. I think beyond the Preds trading Forsberg, it's a question is, does he waive his clause? Because because he's married to a lady who is a singer-songwriter who lives in Nashville. I think personally, he and his wife are very happy here. They just had a kid a year and a half ago. I do not see them being willing to move. I think
I don't want to try. Yeah, I don't want to try to, speak for Forsberg because I have no idea what's inside his heart of hearts and how he feels. The only way I could see him wanting to ever leave Nashville, and I don't think he would want to do it right now, but before the contract's up, maybe is like every player, like if he starts feeling like his time is running out to win a Stanley Cup, that could be what would push him out of Nashville. If Nashville's still so far away, and it appears like they are very far away, but I mean, I just cannot fathom a Nashville Forsberg breakup. right now.
I also want
to, like Boyd said, it's all speculation over information.
I also want to talk on the speculation front, and I very much seen what you're talking about, Boyd, where the guy's like, oh, where Merrick says, like, I'm wondering about Forsberg, Saros, Yossi, yada, yada. And that, obviously, I agree, like, yeah, that's speculation. But I do take it a lot more seriously when a guy, like I've heard the report from David Pagnotta of the fourth period, when he says, I'm anticipating O'Reilly getting moved, and he said it, like, basically twice. That to me is like, okay, that's worth taking seriously right there.
Well, of course, but it makes sense. I mean, trading O'Reilly makes a lot more sense.
But going from I'm wondering to I'm anticipating are two totally
that's two different things.
That's just it. You really have to pay attention to the word choice and how, because especially, and I'll go back to using like an Elliot Friedman or a Chris Johnson or a Darren Drager as being part of like national media, and where that puts them in relation to having to work with the teams and having conversations with teams and players. They are so incredibly careful and purposeful in their word choice. So if they say something like I've heard, you can pretty much take it with absolute certainty they've heard something from somebody if they're willing to say that they've heard it. And then, that's just such a very different thing than, I'm thinking about, I wonder about, there could be a situation where, that's very loose language that you couldn't really ever hold somebody to. So, as we enter this season, of where things may start to change and may start to happen, and, the noise gets noisy, so to speak, you really have to pay attention to the words people use because they are chosen on purpose.
Yeah. And then just to wrap up this fire sale segment real quick, we haven't talked about UC Saros either when it comes, because he has also been thrown around. But again, he's in year one of his new deal of 8 years, and there's just not a lot of teams out there who can take on that kind of cap space right now, especially contenders. And I've heard Edmonton thrown around because they're in deep water right now when it comes to their goalie situation. It threatens them every year to keep them from winning a Stanley Cup is their goalie situation. Stuart Skinner, trust me, the guy's on my fantasy team and he's making me lose sleep on it every night. But Stuart Skinner, I mean, he looks good in the playoffs every now and then, but I mean, he's just awful right now for them. And so you expect Edmonton to be actively looking for a goalie, and so they're linking Saros. But look, I'm a big Saros guy, but his stock is down right now. He's coming off a career low year, and this year, I'm not saying it's his fault, but all his fault. But his trade stock's down too, so I don't see Saros being traded either, especially in year one of his new contract.
I'll also say, and look, I know things change, and obviously the perception of the Preds is way different than it was. Like, I don't know, what was it? Coming like 17 months ago when we had the splurge in free agency around that time where we thought we were going to be a good team for real, and we traded Askarov. And like, look, even if I think like trading Saros is a sensible move, kind of where this team is at, just given everything that happened with the Askarov debacle, and then you get to this, it's like, that's where, like, look, maybe I'm being harsh. That's just where, like, I look at Trotz as GM. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what's your, like, where are you bringing this team? Like, where is your direction with this organization right now? Like, we did all this to get rid of Askarov, which I know it was deeper than just like the hockey thing. Like, I know there was definitely stuff behind the scenes on both sides of Trotz and his agent and Askarov himself, all that stuff. But like, just to move Saros after all that with Askarov, it'd just be such a bad look. It just, I don't know.
You know what's another in hindsight, what's another move that no one talks about that it came from that 2024 offseason? Everyone forgets that we had Scott Wedgwood there for a short amount of time. He didn't look great while he was here, but look at what he's doing for Colorado right now. 11-1-2 with a .917 save percentage and a 2.17 goals against average. So it's kind of crazy to think
Colorado is
from Wedgwood.
insane.
I know, but his numbers are still
they are
good,
leading
though.
the league in like every statistical category.
But he's still got. I mean, those are still great numbers, though. I mean, no matter what team.
100%, 100%.
And my point is, everyone was like, Wedgwood, get this guy out of here, and then we get Justus Onanen, who I hate to be hard on the guy, but I just don't trust him at all as a backup. It feels like you have to have Saros in for.
I don't know that I can judge him that well because these goaltenders are being left out to dry.
Well,
yeah, but dude,
Onanen is getting the historical Preds backup treatment, which is you're going to play on the road on the back end of a back-to-back, against the Rangers before you go over to Sweden. And you're just going to get dusted in the process.
Like, I'm not saying he's been good, but man, I mean,
he is among all qualified goalies. He is one of the worst in the league in goals saved above expected right now. He's in the negative. He's minus 3.3 on the year. You're right. He's only played in 5 games. So he's getting thrown in really difficult situations. I'm just saying that looks pretty bad. That when you see what Wedgwood's doing, but
it still comes back to what were you trying to do with this team? Are you really trying to be a winning team? Which, when they signed Wedgwood alongside with, signing the veteran players in a summer after they made the playoffs, but I don't even know, was it really all in? I mean, maybe sort of. But they still played 9 rookies last season.
This is the thing. We don't know what Trotz. We are so unclear what Trotz's plan was. That's the problem here. We are all asking what was he doing?
It goes back to the running joke that Trotz is just
because it's in pencil, man.
He's like a college kid playing franchise mode in his mom's basement. That's how Trotz runs his front office.
That's basically what Steve said a year ago about.
Yeah, I think, and that's where I think in my estimation, just sort of trying to look forward a little bit, without really.
You're freezing there, Boyd. Hey, Boyd, you're freezing, man, a little bit. So let's see, you're frozen in time right now. But where your screen is frozen, you have a really good thought coming out of your head.
You definitely do.
We're gonna definitely share that on social media tomorrow because it looks like you were saying something. I'm sure you are saying something very, very, very wise about this team. But until we can get you unfrozen, what I was gonna say is let's shift in episode 283 with kind of. What is the next path forward now for the Preds this season? I mean, we don't want to see them tank and lose on purpose, but is that actually probably the best thing for this franchise right now is to, be who they are but also get another lottery pick, they're saying this next draft class is really good in the top 5. So if you're in the top 5, picking in the top 5 again, Max, that could be really good, beneficial for this franchise right now, because honestly, that's kind of like what you need right now. What do you think, Max?
Yeah, as I'm with you in the sense that, I never actually, I always go into games wanting the team to win, get 2 points a night, and that's just how it is. I'm a firm believer in every time you go into the ice, you play to win, and that doesn't change. But I agree. It's a hard thing because, I do agree that, getting a top pick would be really good for this franchise. That's my whole point. The Preds are so talent deficient right now. And because even the guys you thought be talented, like Stamkos, Marchessault, they're way older. Their numbers have fallen. Their underlying numbers have fallen off, especially at even strength. And again, you just don't have nearly enough. You don't have enough. There's such a lack of playmakers on this roster. And if you really want a bona fide playmaker, getting a top 5 pick is the best way you can do that.
Yeah. Let's get another comment in from YouTube. This is from Omar. And they say, correct me if I'm wrong, but Preds seem to offer tons more long-term deals than others. Really kills any flexibility. Hey, that's a really good point there brought up by Omar. Thank you for that comment. So yeah, let's address that real quick as we close this episode out, Max. Offering those long-term deals, we've heard that over the recent years, teams, GMs, and front offices are getting further and further away from offering those long-term deals because it does hamstring you. It does keep you from having that flexibility when you get into these long-term deals. So Omar makes a really good point there. So appreciate the comment there, Omar. I agree that more and more front offices are going to have to start being really careful about handing out these long-term deals, unless you know you have a bona fide franchise player that you do not want to lose and you can get them for a bargain AAV. That's the only time that I would be okay with longer term deals, because then over the life of that contract, you can end up having that player for a bargain because you got a rising salary cap and whatnot. So that's the only time when I'm in favor of the longer term deals, is when you're getting a really good bang for your buck AAV. It does seem like Trotz loves to hand out these long term deals, and Poyle as well.
And not just like, handing out long-term deals, but handing out long-term deals to guys who are not like, homegrown, like really strong guys you drafted and developed, all that kind of stuff. Like say with like the Preds handing out a long-term deal to Philip Forsberg. Obviously that's great. Like it's Philip Forsberg. Obviously he wasn't drafted here, but he was developed here like the whole time. Like we knew Forsberg was a dude like from the moment he entered the league. Like that makes sense. Or a guy like Roman Josi. Again, your guys for real. Like those are your true talents. But again, going out and like signing guys in free agency to bloated 7-8 year contract. We can't sign a guy for 8 years, but in free agency. But like going out and signing a guy to a guy you pick up in free agency to a bloated contract, that's where you really go wrong, and that's what really hamstrings you when you're signing. Like again, like generally speaking, there's a reason guys like that hit free agency. And that's also a thing that I think Barry Trotz has failed to realize. Like certain guys are available for a reason. You can't just go out and sign a guy thinking, oh, he's good. He's quality. Like you have to also think like, why is he available? And what's the red flag here? Like why was he? And what traps could I fall into?
So real quick, just to close this episode out, we do have Boyd back, and we'll let Boyd have the floor to close the episode out. But I just wanted to bring up one more point here. And Boyd, what we were kind of closing the episode out with was just talking about, okay, we already talked about how likely we're going to move on from some of these easier contracts to move. We're going to open up some roster space for some younger players to play to close out the season. We're probably going to be picking in the top 5 again this year in the lottery drawings, which quite frankly might not be that bad of a thing to happen for this team right now, is to get another high-end draft pick, hopefully acquire more draft capital. Maybe you get something awesome out of Ryan O'Reilly. If we could only be so lucky. But when you really look at this roster, and then I'm going to go to you, Boyd, and you can close this out. When you really look at the current contracts, I mean, in the next 2 years, you can see a drastically almost overhaul of this starting lineup, with the exception of Forsberg and Saros and Josi, who are the longer term guys, and Shea, who signed for what seems like an eternity as well. But but you look at the forwards right now. You got Bunting, who's going to be a UFA and likely gone in the next couple months. Hala likely gone before the offseason. Evangelista's only signed for 1 more year, and then they'll have to make a decision on him. Cole Smith is going to be a UFA in this coming up offseason. You've got Michael McCarron, who's going to be a UFA this offseason. Tyson Jost probably isn't in the long-term plans of the team. So you just got like this whole roster is about to go through an overhaul, is my point. So I think drafting in the top 5 at this point is something this it's probably the best thing we can really hope for this team right now. I hate to say it. I don't want them to tank. I don't want them to lose on purpose. But it might not be the worst thing in the world if this team does get another top 5 lottery pick this year. The floor is yours, Boyd.
Yeah. So, I mean, first off, as everybody that I work with, loves to hear, mid-sentence never fails. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, for everyone that has been yelling for the Preds to tank, I mean, it might not be entirely on purpose, but they're doing it. Like, if you want the Preds to tank, you should be just sit there quietly and let it happen, because that's
You should be
currently what's
thrilled.
going on.
You should be
You
thrilled.
should be
You
thrilled.
should be thrilled. Yes.
And it's just the second year in a row it's happening too.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, but-
I think I agree. I mean, you've got, somewhere between, 3 and 6 forward spots that are going to open up, by the time next season rolls around. You've got, presumably there's a couple people on the defensive side that, probably won't be here by the end of the season. And, I'm would assume that at some point Barry Trotz will want to open up a spot for Tanner Mollendijk and maybe a spot for Andrew Gibson to get some time at the NHL level. So, that there is change coming, and there should be a measure of hope that goes along with that. And then, this trade season,
that's all fans really want, is they want to see change.
Yeah. And I think this trade season, as ironically, we say this every year, and it's never, rarely comes to fruition in the way that it gets talked about, but there's not much left of the free agent class for this summer upcoming. When you look at all the people that have signed their extensions, that would have been top flight free agents. Almost all of them, save for like Alex Tuck, are off the board.
Yeah, so you're saying it's not looking like a good year to add to your roster in free agency, is what you're saying.
Especially not among top end, type of players. So what you could see is some of these teams being willing to pay a bit more of a premium in the trade market to get
That's a good point.
Someone like a Stamkos, who's, their cost is known, his term isn't long. Even Marchessault, he's got 3 years left. That feels like a lot. You go to sign someone like Marchessault in free agency, what are you giving him? 5-6 years at probably an even higher number than what he's making now, given how much the cap is going up. So you could see some of these other teams being willing to say, hey, I'll pay a little more to, maintain some cap flexibility and have less term on the books for a guy that, they think they can still, maybe get the most out of. So it'll be a very interesting rest of the season. I'm not holding my breath for a coaching change unless, going back to like the Laviolette era, where following the Winter Classic, it was fairly apparent he had lost the team. They weren't listening.
That's what I was about to say.
Anymore.
I think Trotz would have. I think that's what I was about to actually say. Is I think Trotz would have to start sensing that the locker room is being lost. And from what I understand, the people, from the media who's in there, they don't sense that the locker room's been lost by.
And I'll also add. I kind of want to add for a second. I've thought in my mind, kind of comparing, that team to this, because over the years, the way I've viewed sports and my teams and all that's evolved, and I used to be way more on the side of like, blaming the coach. Now I kind of more on players, because talent is like the biggest commonality among the best teams in the league in all sports is game-changing talent, which the Preds have very little of right now. But I couldn't help but think, compare this team to the 2019, because I at the time was a huge like Fire Laviolette guy even before the Winter Classic. But like even then, I would think that team was better than this one. I would say so. I mean,
by and large, yeah.
And like Granlund,
but it was also a lot more veteran, much more veteran.
Like Granlund, Johansson, Duchesne. I mean, those 3 guys who play centers, that alone is better than the centers the Preds have right now. Like, I know they still have Ryan O'Reilly, but beyond that, I mean.
Yeah. And we can save this topic for a future episode, but just speaking real quick, because we're gonna wrap this up. But when you look at the current prospects who we feel are next up to get significant NHL minutes for the Predators, you're thinking about, you're thinking about Brady Martin eventually, but Tanner Molendyk for sure, Andrew Gibson, but still not a whole lot of impact centers down there in the prospect pool. So that makes me wonder, how long is it going to take Surin to get over here? That's a big one because that guy is lighting it up right now over in the KHL. For his age, isn't he a rookie? He's considered a rookie, right?
He can't even go to Milwaukee for another 2 years.
But my point is, I mean, he can't get here fast enough. If
I think Igor Surin has one more year on his contract in the KHL, so he's probably 27. 2027.
I really think best case scenario. I think best case scenario, we're looking at the Predators being a perennial lottery team for maybe the next 2 or 3 years, and I feel like that's a best case scenario if some of these prospects start hitting and they start coming up here and really taking off fast. I don't see a pathway forward for the Predators to get better in free agency. They're not going to be in a place to really do that. They're gonna be a bottom 5 NHL team for the next few years. I don't see it getting better, but I see it getting worse or staying about the same as it is now before it gets better. There's no instant fixes out there for this team. They're going to have to go through it. They've been a perennial great regular season team for so long. They've spoiled us to a degree when it comes to we've always expected the Predators to be good in the regular season, and our problem was they couldn't prove it in the playoffs. Well, now we ain't even got that. Now we're about to go, the loyalty from some of these fair weather fans is about to be tested because I'm going to stick by this team no matter how angry they make me. And I'm all for seeing this team rebuild the right way. And I think that's that. I'm just going to end the episode that way. I really hope that whatever happens, no matter who gets fired, who gets traded, I just really want to see this franchise go through a proper rebuild. Even if it takes 3 or 4 years, I want to start seeing them be successful like some of these other teams were successful in their rebuilds. And let's do this the right way. Let's build it from the ground up. Let's be better with our prospect development. We got to start our player development has got to be better. That's got to improve. We got to start seeing these prospects hit more on the NHL level.
I'll say that is the one that I'll say to end this episode, or for myself. There are 2 areas where
we're wrapping it up.
Right, there are 2 areas where I think you could really criticize people like me who've defended Brunette for a while. Number 1, and I've said about this before, the young guys have not shown much improvement under him. And granted, now you do see a guy like Matthew Wood doing well, which is good. And also, I will say slightly in Brunette's defense there, he's had mid-first rounders at best, never anything in the top 5 or anything, except Brady Martin, who's you obviously haven't gotten that chance.
I'm not going to count that. I'm not going to count that.
Either way, though, that's one area where I think that you could really kind of take me and others to task who defend Brunette. And also from the standpoint of if you're getting, you have to think if you're in a situation where you want to fire Brunette, you also have to fire Trotz too. At that point, though, maybe it's just best if you're firing one guy, fire both. The only thing that would truly anger me is if you fire Trotz or fire Brunette and keep Trotz. I really think that solves nothing at that point. You're just scapegoating there. But to the point of if you do if you just fire both, wipe the slate clean, I would have absolutely 0 complaints about that.
All right, guys, we are going to get out of here, and we'll get another episode to you very soon as this season rolls along. We're officially at the quarter-way mark of the regular season. So we will see what the Predators can do. We'll see if they can prove us wrong and start showing more promise. Thank you for joining us, everyone. This has been episode 283 of Catfish on Ice with your hosts, Chad Minton, Max Greenberg, and Boyd Farrish. We hope to see you again real soon. Enjoy the rest of your weeks. Hit subscribe on YouTube. Thank you for all the comments we got tonight from the people watching. Thank you, and we hope to see you again soon. Take care, everybody.